Okay, and I'm back now with Elizabeth. So let's go ahead and take a look at her statement. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this one. We've got a waterscape, a series of water pictures, and very interesting that it appears as though you've chosen to go black and white with this. The first thing that well, probably the first thing my eye is drawn to is the focal point, which is that fountain right there. And, she's very, very clearly used the rule of thirds, to put that water fountain, yeah, that water spray just right there. I don't think it would hurt much if you were to maybe shift the horizon and the fountain down just a little tiny bit. But the reason being, I'm glad that you left a lot of room. We talked about, hey, if there's an interesting sky, let the sky dominate. If there is an interesting ground plane, let the ground dominate. And, that's what she's done here. Very, very interesting. Just for a little tiny bit more balance, what one thing is that I feel about like things with edges touching, either leave some space between an object and the edge of the frame or go ahead and crop it, but don't just kind of be on the fence with it, because it just, I think it would look good if the top of your frame was about to where the top of my cursor is right now. It wouldn't cost you a lot. You'd maybe lose, like, say, from here down, or just maybe slightly repositioning. I just feel like even though you're very, very clearly adhering to the rule of thirds, remember that that is a guideline. It's not like an exact measurement. And so if it feels right, to shift it a little bit one way or the other, it still complies. But sorry about that. But I think it's a nice image. A lot of room for bringing out some highlights in here. One of the things we need to work on in black and white photography is we really lose a lot of detail in areas once they start to get real dark. And when you guys are reading about the zone system in Ansel Adams' work, you'll because your next project is black and white, so you'll get a chance to learn how to make areas like this look a little bit better. Okay, and I'll probably say the same thing here. I don't think that this one is as interesting as this. It seems to me the water is a little bit blown out here. This one has a lot more stuff going on. A lot more interesting reflections, which I do also think you could play up a little bit. I think that you could kind of darken some of those a little bit. This one does not seem to have the drama for some reason. It's almost the same composition, but kind of a mirror image of it. You've kind of moved to the other side of the pier a little bit, and in this particular case, since the water it isn't really all that interesting. Perhaps it would be if you came in and like did some burning on some of the shadows and midtones, to sorry about that, to exaggerate the texture. That's something you could do, but it's just feeling a little bit like you've taken most of the information in the picture and tried to kind of cram it all up in here. So again, I really appreciate that you are very strictly adhering to that rule of thirds. But you know, again, keep in mind that there's some playroom with that, and so you know, if you need to kind of use little guides on your camera viewfinder, you know, to kind of get it set up, then turn those little guidelines off, and you kind of generally know where your composition is. Now, kind of move your camera around just a little until it feels right. And again, there's really interesting stuff going on in here that I think our eye is really curious about, you know, that we would really like to see. And so it's almost kind of like it's a little bit of a tempting or like a tease here, like, oh, look at this really cool stuff, but you don't get to look at it. Okay. Horizon's crooked on this one, so this would be a pretty easy fix with either Photoshop or Lightroom. If you know, it is sometimes hard to get the horizon just the way you want it, um, but it's just super easy to fix in the editing software. That this one I think could be very interesting if it wasn't so blown out and if it wasn't tilting, because you have an interesting um, silhouette here that I, you know, I think this is the strength of the picture right here is there's almost like a balance happening on the top side of this line and balancing against the bottom side of this line. It's not like a reflection, but this seems to balance this tree out very nicely. The spray from the fountain seems to balance out the texture in these trees very nicely. But it needs the sky and the water around it to draw your eye in. And right now, this is a you know, this is an exposure situation. It's really tricky, you guys. I know it's really tricky to, you know, get it to all work. My thing that I do with landscapes, um, this is just something that works for me. Is I will sometimes intentionally underexpose a little bit when I'm shooting in RAW because that helps me get that darker sky, and it's so easy to come in with, you know, like dodge and burn or you know, with a mask and bring out some highlights in those dark areas. For whatever reason, I find it easier to introduce highlights to an area that's too dark, as opposed to darkening an area that's too light. Now, you could do a little bit of both, but there's a lot going on that we're just really missing out on here. Oh, and this is something that doesn't need to be there. That would be easily fixed with content aware fill. Okay. Okay, this is probably the most interesting one so far. Um, why? Well, you really nailed it on this reflection right here. You know, if anything, I wouldn't mind having you get a little closer, or you know, moving in. If you have a longer possible focal length on your lens, perhaps doing that. Um, this one, I think, just almost hits the mark. You know, we could use a lot more contrast back in here. You don't have to worry about there being so much contrast back here that it's going to be distracting from this, because this is very almost overpowering right here. You know, it's actually a little bit blown out in a couple of areas, and you know, it's tricky, you guys, when you're taking pictures of reflections. They can be incredible. They can take something and make it just really abstract. It's really nice, but you know, just trying to kind of meter so that you get, you know, this area looks beautifully exposed and this area here looks kind of, oh, I wish there was a lot more texture happening over here. So you know, you might want to think about going back on some of these and applying some selective edits to you know, masked off areas, and I think you'll see a huge difference in, you know, taking an average picture and making it look really good. Okay. Got a little bit more sunshine coming out in this one, but I think that this one has better value range than the others. I love the little duck in the foreground, kind of observing everything that's going on. Again, I think that there's a lot of potential for some really cool dramatic texture happening here in the foreground if it had enough value contrast, enough lights and darks to compete with the very, very strong and severe contrast that we have on the pier right here. And I think that's kind of the appeal of this is that the way the light's hitting it, it's so either light or dark. It's very, very contrasty. It's very dramatic in doing that. It might be fun to try a few compositions where I think no matter what you do, you must be in a boat or something. It seems like you're in the water. You're gonna have water in the foreground no matter what. It might be interesting to just play around with a little less of the foreground and a little bit more of your most interesting area. It's kind of oh, I wish there was a little bit more of this. I wish the pier was kind of you know doing this so that maybe you've got say a third here and then another third here for the bottom of the pier, something like that. The little duck looking on, that's great. Okay. This one's really interesting. This one I really like as a composition. The first thing that my eye goes to is this slope, this kind of swooping line that you have right here. And it's really, really nice in black and white. Horizon is crooked a little bit, at least it looks that way to me. Um, there might be some stuff that you could play up along here on the sand. I would probably come and burn some of the midtones just a tad. Might even want to burn the shadows on the water just right along this edge here just to get a little bit more contrast. Just a little tiny bit more drama because again, like in the last one, the light hitting the pier in the background is very strong. It's very, very strong. And therefore that's the thing that everything else in the image has to kind of work around. I like this tree branch coming into the corner here. It's not just like barely peeking in, or it's like really in there. And I love the way that this arc points your eye directly to the the pier, the building or whatever this is. You've got another one of those implied lines. It's really nice. So yeah, so you've done a nice job on these. I appreciate that you've been sticking to the adhering to the rule of thirds. I think maybe you're approaching it a little bit technically, and you're free to loosen up on that just a little bit. Be a little bit more artistic with your compositions. Use the rule of thirds as a starting point, not an end point, and take better advantage of the Photoshop. But and good work going black and white on this one because we really hadn't even discussed it all that much. So I really enjoyed looking at these. Thank you.